Of course. Here's Section 1 constructed as a continuous, focused narrative, limited to 1,500 words, introducing the core characters and the central conflict with purposeful pacing and rich vocabulary. They came from stars with promises of silence. No parley, no conquest anthem, no declaration of war, only a quiet erasure. The sky had fractured above Earth one summer night, streaked with vessels that looked less like ships and more like jagged, living wounds in the fabric of space. People gathered in the streets, eyes tilted upward, watching as the stars themselves seemed to bleed. Within a week, the world governments had collapsed. Cities fell not in blazing ruin, but in cold precision. Electrical grids flickered out like candle wicks. Satellites turned blind. Language broke down, not just between nations, but among neighbors. Fear unspooled society like loose thread. The invaders, silvery-skinned, jointless creatures whose movements resembled fluid metal, swept across continents, untouchable and wordless, wiping out resistance with surgical efficiency. They were called the Others because no name could ever quite define what they were. To some, they were gods. To others, extinction made flesh. In the crumbling mountains of Colorado, the remnants of one such resistance cell held their breath behind the hollowed-out shell of a fuel station. Among them was Lena Vance, former U.S. Army handler turned fugitive, her uniform reduced to faded scraps and mud. Her dog, a massive black German shepherd named Bishop, sat silently at her side, ears cocked forward, eyes unblinking. "You feel that?" whispered Raoul, a wiry teenager clutching an old bolt-action rifle with shaking hands. Lena didn't answer. She felt it, a subtle shift in the air pressure, the kind that came before lightning or death. The others didn't make sound, not with their weapons, but the environment changed around them. Static buzzed in metal, birds vanished, and air grew impossibly dry. She pressed 2 fingers to Bishop's neck. The dog's pulse was steady, calm, focused. She envied him for that. "Stay down. No movement," she said softly, her voice a whisper drawn taut with discipline. Raoul nodded, swallowing his panic like it was razor wire. It was the 3rd patrol this week. The others had grown more active, sweeping the region with methodical precision. They weren't searching for survivors out of fear. They were cleaning up. Lena watched through the slatted window as the tall, unnatural figures glided down the road. Their bodies shimmered, not with light, but with motion, like liquid chrome poured into humanoid molds. One paused, tilting its head toward the ruins. Bishop stiffened. She didn't move, didn't breathe. Then the sound, a muffled cough. Not hers, not Raoul's. It came from somewhere in the dark recesses of the fuel station, from an old man they'd taken in days ago. His lungs were brittle, bark-peeling paper. She'd warned him. He hadn't listened. The other turned fully toward the station. Lena's hand dropped to Bishop's side. "Go," she whispered. He moved like a shadow made solid. No growl, no bark, just muscle and intent. The door burst outward as Bishop launched forward, colliding with the alien mid-step. There was a sound like tearing fabric, though nothing physical tore. The other staggered, its form shifting wildly in a dance of light and metal. But Bishop didn't hesitate. He tore into the figure with teeth built for war, reinforced with bone-strengthening implants from a time when the military still believed it could win. Raoul raised his rifle, but Lena pushed it down. "Wait," she said. "Let him finish." And he did. When the dust settled, the other lay in a sprawl of twitching limbs, its body evaporating into ash. Bishop stood over the ruin, chest heaving, jaws slick with alien ichor. His eyes glowed faintly, not red, not unnatural, but with purpose. Raoul stared wide-eyed. "That thing killed 5 men in Omaha. I saw it. It just melted them." "Not this time," Lena said, stepping into the street. "Not against one of ours." From the distance, a shrill tone pierced the air. A beacon. They'd triggered a distress signal. More were coming. She turned to Raoul. "Get the old man. We move north. Now." As they gathered their gear, Bishop stood beside her, ever watchful. He was not an ordinary dog. None of them were. Not anymore. During the early stages of the collapse, before the networks went dark, Lena had been part of Project Fenrir, a classified experiment designed to enhance canine cognition, reflex, and tactical synchronization. The program was controversial, deeply buried, and largely considered a failure. But hadn't failed. It had merely gone off the grid. Now, what the others had dismissed as mere beasts, domesticated, primitive beneath notice, had become the harbingers of a reckoning. They traveled by night, using broken highways as trails. Along the way, they met others, a pair of scavengers from New Mexico with a one-eyed Doberman who never barked but watched the horizon with military calculation. A woman from Kansas who claimed her retriever could sniff out cloak patrols 3 miles off. Everywhere they went, there were stories, packs of dogs appearing out of nowhere, attacking enemy outposts with brutal efficiency, then vanishing like ghosts. Survivors started calling them hounds of vengeance. To Lena, they were just family. 3 days later, they reached a settlement in the forest, one of the last strongholds of the resistance. It wasn't much. Tents, solar panels, crude barricades, and a watchtower constructed from a collapsed radio mast. But it was organized, focused, and it had dogs. Dozens of them. Not just shepherds or Malinois, but ferals, mutts, and strays. Each trained, bonded, and fiercely intelligent. Some bore scars. Others, strange harnesses with blinking blue lights. Remnants of the Fenrir tech. As they entered the encampment, a lean man in his 40s stepped forward. His beard was streaked with gray, his eyes hard but kind. At his side was a hulking brindle mastiff with half an ear missing and one golden eye. "You must be Vance," the man said. "Used to be," she replied, shaking his hand. "I'm Carter. Welcome to Packstone." That night, beneath the flickering perimeter lights, Lena sat with Bishop beside a dying fire. Around them, dogs lounged like silent sentries. Occasionally, one would twitch, then settle again, as if dreaming of war. "They underestimated us," Carter said, approaching with 2 tin mugs of something vaguely coffee-like. "They always do," Lena answered, taking the mug. "But they didn't just misread humans. They misread our bond, the history we share." She looked at Bishop. His eyes were closed, but his ears twitched at every sound. "They thought we'd fall apart," she said. "Instead, we adapted." A distant howl cut through the woods. Not wild, not desperate. A signal. Every dog in the camp stirred. Ears up, eyes sharp. Lena rose to her feet, heart already bracing. Carter sighed, setting his mug aside. "Looks like the front's moved again." She tightened her grip on Bishop's harness. "Then so do we." The darkness beckoned, but they no longer feared it. They had teeth in the shadows, and vengeance in their blood. Let me know if you want me to continue into Section 2. Of course. Here's Section 2 of the story, continuing directly from Section 1, maintaining narrative focus, deepening the character arcs, and pushing the central conflict forward, kept within 1,500 words. Dawn arrived, cloaked in mist, curling through the trees like the last breath of some dying god. The camp was already stirring, its occupants silent and efficient. Dogs moved in tandem with their handlers, collecting gear, patrolling the perimeter, or crouched in stillness, waiting for command. The morning carried tension, not the kind born of fear, but of preparation. Lena strapped the last magazine to her thigh and knelt beside Bishop. He leaned into her touch as she adjusted the scanner collar around his neck. It was old tech, half glitched, but it still picked up movement through dense terrain. She scratched behind his ears, and for a moment, he closed his eyes, indulging in the brief luxury of affection. Then, like a switch had flipped, he was alert again. "We're close," Carter said, stepping beside her, his mastiff, Luther, casting a shadow like a small bear. "The patrol that sent the signal last night, 2 miles northeast. Radio went dead mid-transmission. No survivors confirmed. But the dogs, they wouldn't have called unless they were still holding ground." Lena looked over the map, a patchwork of satellite prints and hand-drawn updates. They dug in at the ridge line. Carter nodded. Narrow slope, forest cover, and just below that, an enemy forward base. "New. We think they're testing something." What kind of something? We're not sure, but our dogs avoid the perimeter like it's fire. Whatever's down there, it's wrong. Unnatural, even by their standards. Lena's eyes narrowed. Then we go find out. They moved as one. 10 handlers, each with their dog, fanning out in staggered formation through the underbrush. It wasn't like the old days. No radio chatter, no humming drones overhead. Just movement and instinct, the silent thread of trust between soldier and hound. They reached the ridge by mid-morning. Smoke curled up from below, not black and roiling like from fire, but pale, shimmering, laced with iridescence. It clung unnaturally to the trees, and the silence in the air was absolute. No birds, no insects, just the distant hum of something alien pulsing in the earth. Raoul spotted it first, a shimmer among the rocks. He held up a fist, and the team froze. Bishop was already ahead, creeping low, every muscle taut. He stopped at the body. No, not a body. What remained of a man, or had been. The shape was human, but fused into the stone, like he'd been pressed there by impossible force and melted into the rock face. His mouth was open in a scream that had never finished. Raoul stumbled back, face pale. What the hell did this? He whispered. Lena scanned the area. Not a weapon. Not in the traditional sense. Carter stepped closer, his voice low. They're evolving. This isn't just suppression anymore. They're experimenting. Lena pointed down the slope. Base is there. We take a team in. Small. Fast. We gather intel, map their defenses, and pull out before they even know we're breathing. Carter nodded grimly. Agreed. 4 of us. We move in 20. She chose her team carefully. Raoul for his speed, Carter for his knowledge of the terrain, and Marin, a former recon operative with nerves of steel and a scar across her temple that never quite healed. Their dogs were the best. Bishop, Luther, and Marin's sleek, brindle-coated hound named Sable, who moved like smoke and struck like a knife. They left the others behind, slinking into the undergrowth like ghosts. The forest grew stranger the closer they got. Trees leaned away from the center of the valley, bark blistered as if touched by acid. Ground shimmered underfoot. Bishop growled low once, then fell silent as Lena signaled for quiet. They reached the edge of the basin within the hour. The base wasn't a structure. It was a hole, perfectly circular, 100 meters wide, ringed with pylons of dark alloy that pulsed with sickly green light. Floating above the center was an orb. No, a sphere of distortion, as if the air itself had knotted into a wound that refused to heal. Around it, the others stood motionless, heads tilted upward, bathed in the pulsating glow. They're not guarding it, Marin whispered. They're worshipping it. Lena's pulse ticked up. We're drawing something through it. She raised her scope, adjusting the lens. The distortion wasn't just light. There were shapes within, flashes of movement that didn't belong, things with too many limbs and no symmetry, clawing at the edges like something trying to be born. Bishop snarled. Time to go, Carter muttered. But as they turned, a tree beside them exploded into splinters. One of the others was on them. No sound, no warning, just a blur of shifting metal and tendrils that rippled with heat. Bishop launched forward without hesitation, intercepting the strike midair. Luther followed, and Sable flanked. The 3 dogs tore into the alien with terrifying coordination, attacking its limbs, dragging it off balance, forcing it back. More movement in the valley. Alarms surged, an inhuman wailing sound that wasn't mechanical, but organic, like lungs exhaling inside steel. They know we're here, Lena growled. We move. Now. They ran, dogs covering them, biting and retreating, leaving trails of glimmering blood across the dirt. The trees lit up behind them with pulses of otherworldly fire, scorching branches and tearing holes through the ground. Still they ran. Lena felt the heat lick the side of her leg as a bolt slammed into a boulder beside her. It didn't explode, it unraveled the stone, turning it into strands of ash. Her lungs burned, but she didn't stop. It was Bishop who turned back first. No, Lena shouted, but it was too late. He charged, intercepting another of the alien creatures that had flanked them. It was taller, thinner, its limbs crackling with blue flame. Bishop tackled at mid-stride, jaws locking around its throat. They vanished into the mist together. "Bishop!" she screamed, skidding to a stop. Raoul grabbed her. "We have to go. He's buying time." She hesitated, pain wrenching her chest, but she knew. Bishop had made the call, the kind of decision no ordinary dog could ever make. They reached the ridge moments later, tumbling into the dirt as the rest of the team rushed to cover them. Carter barked orders. The remaining dogs formed a perimeter, their teeth bared, senses locked. Lena rose slowly, her breath ragged. She scanned the forest, desperate. No sign of him. Then movement. Bishop stumbled from the trees, bloodied and limping, his coat scorched. But his eyes were burning bright. Behind him, no pursuers, just silence. She ran to him, dropping to her knees, pulling him into her arms. He licked her face once, then sat heavily, exhausted but alive. "You stubborn bastard," she whispered. That night, the camp was silent. The intel they gathered painted a grim picture. The others weren't just occupying, they were transforming, twisting the world, opening gates. But something else had changed, too. They had struck back and returned. They had proven something. The others weren't invincible. They bled. And somewhere deep in their alien network, perhaps for the first time, the invaders would feel a new sensation bloom in their hive consciousness. Not strategy, not confusion, but fear. Let me know when you're ready for Section 3. Of course, here's Section 3 of the narrative, staying within the 1,500-word limit, maintaining a tight focus on the central conflict, and continuing character development in a meaningful way. The rain came with no warning, sheets of cold water drenching the camp, drumming on tarps and armored vests, smothering the ever-present smell of ash and ozone. It washed the blood from their boots, but not from their memories. For a moment, the world felt clean again. But Lena knew better. She sat beneath the half-assembled canopy, eyes fixed on Bishop. His wounds had been treated, burns salved, slashes stitched, but he remained still, his breath slow and heavy. His eyes followed her every move, not in pain, but in vigilance. Even injured, he was ready. Raoul returned from the far perimeter, his face ashen. "We've lost contact with Echo Squad. They were 3 clicks west of us, moving toward the southern tunnel entrance." "How long since transmission?" Lena asked. 2 hours. No response. Carter approached, helmet under one arm, mud streaking his cheek. "They're gone. Or worse." Lena stood, adjusting the strap across her chest. "Then we move in. No delay." Marin shook her head. "We're down to 4 dogs. Ours are exhausted. Half the team is barely standing. And yet we're still breathing," Lena said flatly. "Echo might not be. We owe them the same chance Bishop gave us." There was no argument after that. They moved at dusk, shadows among shadows, boots silent on the wet forest floor. The world around them had grown quieter, stranger. Trees leaned more sharply, and the sky pulsed a deeper shade of violet. The distortion field wasn't just growing, it was leaking. The air itself seemed to resist them, as if pushing back, unwilling to let them pass. They reached the tunnel's edge just as the last light bled from the sky. The mouth yawned open, dark, jagged, and humming with static. This had once been a subway line, deep underground, now repurposed by the others into something colder, more alien. The tracks still ran, but they pulsed faintly with green energy like veins under skin. Inside, the scent was wrong, like copper and decay wrapped in burnt plastic. Luther growled low, his massive head twitching at some inaudible signal. Sable padded forward, almost reluctantly, her coat bristling. Bishop stayed close to Lena, eyes locked ahead. They moved in pairs, Carter and Marin covering the rear. Every few steps, they marked the walls, infrared chalk barely visible. They'd been trapped once before. They wouldn't be again. After 15 minutes, they found the first body. But what was left? It wasn't Echo. It was one of the others. Its form had been shredded, torn open by